Thanks for coming, everybody, this morning. This is our monthly Creators and Coffee event. My name is Jeff Tanner. I am your host for this morning and most mornings when we do this. This is a monthly event just to get creators, leaders, founders, people who have ideas, who want to do good and work in the world together, and to be a part of a community. We're better together. We're going to talk even a little bit about that later, about the power of community regarding the mental health crisis. And so we're going to have a great conversation this morning. Before we do that, I just want to give a little context for why you're here. If this is your first time, Creators and Coffee is put on by Hildegard College primarily, but Hildegard College is a part of an entrepreneurial ecosystem here in this fieldwork building with Buenos Coffee, Hildegard, the Formation Agency. There are a number of these organizations that are out of this building, that work out of this building in this community that we've created that is pursuing good work in the world. And we call it the common good. And the evidence of the common good being realized is when the most vulnerable in our society are flourishing. That is our hope, that is our dream, that is our goal for whatever we're doing out of this space. And so if you're here a part of that, then we invite you to join us in the pursuit of the common good. If you want to know more about Hildegard, we talk about Hildegard as an undergraduate experience, also with an entrepreneur lab. So we have an undergraduate program that is for people who are interested in thinking deeply and also creating boldly. So the thinking deeply part is the classical liberal arts, the philosophy, the wisdom of history's greatest thinkers. But we don't want to just rest there. We want to actually create in the world out of that wisdom. So we call this wisdom-based entrepreneurship. And Hildegard College has a full undergraduate program and then also an entrepreneur lab. And one of the things that we have kind of been concepting out of this space, as many of you who have attended have come to us and said, hey, I want to be a part of something a little bit more. We are talking about creators cohorts, and we have a waiting list for people who are interested in being a part of a creators cohort. That would be for people who have ideas, who want to do good work in the world, maybe don't know how to start, how to get going, or just want to be in community to toss ideas around and to start moving forward with their ventures. So if you are interested in that, scan the QR code, or you can talk to Rachel, who helped check you in today. She is our community development lead for Hildegard College, and she can get you connected into Hildegard and get you more information about that. The space that is back here is Fieldwork. This is a co-working space. Co-working is free for any day we do a Creators and Coffee event. We are a community of people who are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, founders. We have offices around the perimeter of the building. If you want to just go back there and take a tour, even if you can't stay today, that would be great. And we have co-working memberships. You can see the options up here, starting as low as $99 a month. And it would just be great if you are looking for a space to work out of, or just want to be a part of a community and come by occasionally and do some work. That would be awesome. There are a few co-working members that are here right now. I'm excited for our topic this morning and also for our speaker this morning. We have Dr. Julia Evans with us. Let's give her a hand. Thanks for being here. She is I'll let you give us a little bit more context for the fullness of why you're here, but she specializes in neuropsychology. She's the founder of Brain Wellness Institute. She doesn't love being on stages like this. She prefers to lead from the kind of, the organization in the background. But she agreed to join us today to talk about mental health, the mental health crisis, kind of where she's seeing the current state of our reality and the future. And then she's going to give us some hope at the end. So we talked about not just making this sort of a deep, dark subject, but which it is in a lot of ways, but we want to get some hope in the end and some ways that we can respond as creators and as leaders in community in order to see our way through this strange time that we find ourselves in. So Julia, would you just give us a kind of the context for founding Brain Wellness Institute, maybe your background just a little bit leading up to why did you choose to found that organization and where do you find yourself leading that today?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, Jeff. Thank you all for coming this morning. I'm excited. I hope this is an interesting conversation for you all. And yeah, it is, my industry is often a darker industry. And so the hope part felt a little hard for me, but I actually think I came up with some good stuff that we're going to hopefully hit on at the end here. I spoke at a career day yesterday for 5-year-olds and trying to just talk about the field of psychology and mental health in a way that is exciting was actually probably more challenging than this talk here today. So anyways, so yeah, I'm Julia Evans. I have my doctoral degree in neuropsychology, went to USC, studied neuroscience and business, got my PhD from Loma Linda, did my residency at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and did a fellowship at UCLA. So just that's a quick snapshot of my background. And I founded a company called Brain Wellness Institute a little over 8 years ago. Our main office is here in Costa Mesa, right next to South Coast Plaza, but we have satellite clinics in Carlsbad, Riverside, Rancho Cucamonga, Santa Monica, Mountain View, and Nashville, and we're expanding into Hawaii as well. So we have quite a few offices. We've got about 65 clinicians. So it's a pretty rapidly growing practice. We are proud to really be able to offer really full service outpatient psychological services to our community. So we do testing and we do therapy. That's about 50-50 what we do. So we do autism testing for ADHD, learning disabilities, personality disorders, and full comprehensive, more medically complex neuropsychological evaluations for things like dementia, somebody's come in after a head injury, something like that. We also do therapy. So we do outpatient therapy for little kids all the way through geriatric population, everything in between, and the full spectrum of psychopathology. We do therapy via telehealth and in person. So just in a nutshell, that's kind of my professional clinical background. So on a personal note, I have 4 kids, and so a lot of how I conceptualize mental health as well comes from my perspective as being a mother and raising a now teenager in the world that we are living in. So just that's a little snapshot of me. Another thing I wanted to just mention, I guess why I got into this industry. I was initially pre-med, going down a path studying biology and neuroscience, and I worked in an emergency room in LA, and I just became acutely aware that if we don't have our mental health, what do we really have? And I felt as a Christian that I felt like that's really what I felt like God was calling me to do, was to step into this space, which is a hard place to work. It's a hard industry. It's high stress. Often you don't feel like you're doing much, but I feel like it's a critically important industry and very meaningful. So my goal for our business has always really been this motto of it's our privilege to serve our patients. So it's an attitude of humility, respect for other people, and responsibility. I came from a lot of workplaces where it was often the attitude was you're lucky to see me kind of an attitude, and I never wanted that for our company. So I really try from a top down, try to embody that philosophy of humility with our providers and our patients. So
it's beautiful. As you think about the outcomes of your work, you talked kind of how you got into this and the specific challenge of place that we're in, kind of in context in society today. What do you see as the outcomes or the good of your work? So that the key question that we're exploring this semester at Hildegard, and in these, if you've been around for the last few, is the question, what is the good? And so how would you answer that question for yourself? What is the good in the work that you do, maybe from an outcomes perspective, from a goals perspective? How do you maintain, maybe this connects to some of the hope conversation later too, but how do you maintain a sense of what's good that maybe could give you hope down the road?
Yeah, I think that our goal as psychologists and in our practice, it's really not perfection. It's that we're striving to help improve the quality of life for our patients, to have healthier relationships, to have more emotional regulation, to have hope. And one thing that I feel passionate about as a business owner is that, good or bad sometimes, I feel called to provide care to our whole community, which is not something that's super popular. And in order to be able to provide care to the whole community, in my opinion, practically we take insurance. So we take more than 25 insurances. I consider working with insurance like working with the mafia, literally. So there's a lot of providers that just can't, they just say, it's just not worth it. I can't work with this entity, this monster of a company that is constantly just trying to take money from me. So that's my battle, is to be able to work effectively with insurance so that people can access care. Because if you say to people, well, yeah, you can come see me for $300 an hour, it's a barrier to access to care, in my opinion. So that's something that I really strive for, is that we are able to provide care to our whole community through taking insurance and providing excellent care. I mean, we take Medi-Cal, which to provide care to Medi-Cal patients it's highly unpopular in my professional space. But I think it's the right thing to do, and to treat a Medi-Cal patient just the same as you'd treat a cash patient. To really provide care to the whole population. One other thing that I was going to say. We also work with a lot of young professionals. So another part of my passion is empowering the next generation of psychologists. So we work with fellows and people who are just kind of stepping onto the scene here. And it's not that I've been on the scene for that long, but I have a little more wisdom. And I just think helping empower them to become well-rounded clinicians who care for themselves really helps them care for our community. So that's a lot of the good that I think we're doing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was just, I've been doing a lot of work in the leader care space, and just what you mentioned about the need for the future clinicians to be healthy themselves in order for the people they serve to be healthy. There is a causal chain of effect in the health of a leader to the health of the people that they're serving, to the health of the communities, to the health of the cities, from a really comprehensive systemic perspective. Like, there's socioeconomic, there's social impact, there's financial impact. That's all kind of built into that bigger mix. So it's beautiful that you have that leader care kind of mentality, especially targeting the future generation. That's really great.
Absolutely. One thing I was going to say at the end, but I think there is this shift that I'm seeing from even when I was in grad school, where it was almost like it was glorified to be like an worker, right? Working 60 hours a week. Sleep deprivation was normal. Burnout was normal. These were all very normal things when I was going through grad school. For me, I was so burnt out after I finished my fellowship, I just took 2 years off to be with my daughter. I was like, I actually can't do this career. This is not the career for me. And then I really thought about it, and it came back in. But I think that we are seeing this shift away from that, where people are, seeing the value of taking care of themselves, which is something I want to hit on at the end here. But
before we do that, let's get to how did we get to that place? Yeah, well, how did we get to that place where you were, as a aspiring mental health professional, like going through this process that actually puts you in a really, ironically, poor state of mental health, burnout, that kind of crisis? Like, how did we get here as a society? If we kind of jump back 30,000 foot level, look back down objectively and say, what happened over the course of the past, 20, 30 years, or maybe longer at this point, that got us to the place that we're in, do you think?
I think it's just been a concept of like our value is on the productivity of our producing achievement. How much can we get done? That's been the value. I mean, true story. And again, I mentor a lot of young women now, so I've created a workplace that I hope is the antithesis of this. But when I was in training, I will just say, we had a pretty well-known neuropsychologist who was a supervisor to us, and she advised us as fellows that we, in our early, I guess we were in our late 20s, early 30s-ish, and she made some public statements that she thought that it would be wise for us to freeze our eggs, focus on our careers in our 30s, and then maybe have kids later in our 40s. And I remember thinking, and I accidentally had a kid on residency, so I already had a kid at this point. And I just remember thinking, what an upside down concept this was, that it was just like all about the work. How much can you produce at the expense of yourself? And there was a real shift, almost the opposite, I'd say 5-8 years ago. Or some of us as supervisors were like, these kids have no work ethic. Where did it go? But now I feel like we're coming back to some kind of middle ground where we want to work hard, we want to do good things for the world and our community, but we also want to value ourselves and take care of ourselves, and that's the best way to care for our community. So that's like a shift I feel like I'm seeing. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know if that was a long-winded answer to your question.
Good. I think that's just, it's helpful to even hear, we see cultural pendulum swings throughout history where it's like, oh, we're overcorrecting on this end or we're overcorrecting on this end. And so it feels like what you're describing is we were way over here and it was like ultra productivity. We define our success. I mean, this is a very Western, US American, especially where we live in California, Orange County, like we're in the hyper bubble of productivity equals my self-worth, right? If I am what I achieve, I am
my 16-page CV.
That's right, yeah. Even as you're going through your CV, your resume, it's like, oh, this is me. This is the fullness of my identity. It has nothing to do with your family and what you bring to your community and all of the stuff that's auxiliary and comprehensive. That's actually the fullness of your humanity in your life. So I think it's interesting just to hear the irony of that in the mental health space, and then it's helpful to hear there's maybe a pendulum swing. It's funny,
this is off topic here, but honestly, like I said, I work with a lot of young women who are coming out of fellowship, and hey, that happens to be the time when you might want to have a kid, right? And but often we're really afraid to talk about that, like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm so sorry, it's like, but yet we promote wellness, we promote mental health, but yet honestly, we really don't promote it ourselves a lot of the times at all. And we talk about, self-care. I always used to use self-care concept as like, that's my greatest weakness on an interview. I just don't have good self-care. I'm just such a hard worker, as almost something I was proud of. And now I say to these young women I work with, I say, you're at this precipice where up until now, your personal life has just been supporting your career. And everything has gone into that. And now for a healthy transition, your career needs to support your personal life. And that's a pivot that if you want to, I think, strive for health and wellness, that's how we would be directing it now, is that your career supports your real life, really. And so I think it's still not talked about much, really, in my industry, but yeah.
Let me ask the question this way. I could still want to kind of explore the crisis.
Yeah.
How bad is the mental health crisis? Like, have you seen this continual deterioration? Like, where are we at today? Because it feels like, I have kids too, and we're experiencing and seeing a lot of research out there that our kids are subject to all the algorithms and going down these really bad, into really bad spaces and dealing with anxiety and depression. I mean, what are some of the stats out there just to kind of set the stage for the crisis itself? Quantify it maybe.
Yeah, this is just, let's just get through it, because this is not the greatest part of our talk here. But, I think that there's really not a single cause of where we're at, but there's a lot of factors that are affecting the mental health crisis. And I kind of want to focus on probably technology as a major input there. But I think overall, our brains we're not designed for constant stimulation, comparison, accessibility, and nonstop information coming at us. Our brains, it feels like in this day and age, our brains rarely have quiet. We rarely experience stillness. And when we don't have that, it makes it difficult for us to integrate emotions, memories, meaning, identity. So, I think that's part of where the problem, and I'm going to talk about some alarming stats here in a second, but I think that we're constantly obviously getting notifications. We're constantly multitasking, scrolling. We have a digital overload. And I think these things are impacting absolutely our mental health overall. So let's just get through some of the most alarming stats here. And then we're going to talk about hope. Overall, I think that we're more digitally connected than ever. but we feel more alone than ever. Actually, that's what's happening. We have a reduction in our face-to-face interactions. We have a reduction in our outdoor time, reduction in our time that we are still, and we have a total decrease in our sense of belonging within our communities. So we've normalized chronic stress and stimulation, which I think is our problem. Let's talk about kids and adolescents. 1 in 5 now have a diagnosable mental disorder. 20% have depression, about 16% anxiety. This was an alarming statistic I read. The CDC put out that depression in US teens and adults has increased 60% in the past decade. So that's probably why we call it a crisis, right? This is, and I have an almost 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in individuals 10 to 24, which is really devastating for our communities. Another thing that everyone's talking about, and we've seen a huge uptick in this in our referrals to our practice, is autism. And I don't want to get into all the whys of autism, but we'll just put these numbers out here because this is not disputable, really. In the year 2000, there was a rate of about autism in about 150 people. Now it's 1 in 30, or actually in 2022 it was 1 in 31, and I think now it's probably even higher. So to go from 1 in 150 to 1 in 31, there's something going on here in our society, right? So technology, ages 10 to 24 are on screens about 7 to 9 hours a day. And that's pretty alarming, right? Between school and socializing and after school or video games, that's a lot of waking hours that we are on screens. So one concept now, I have a 13-year-old, I will say, and we do not, she does not have a cell phone, which is like a tragedy for a 13-year-old. She's probably has PTSD, she would say, from not having that, I think. And we go to a small school, I think there's about 10 kids in her class. I think all but one have cell phones and have for 5 years at this point. So she's an outlier, but she has a wall phone from the 1990s in her room that she can make calls. And, it's laughable, but I can't tell you how many parents come up to me. What was that phone you use? What's that phone that she has? And people are interested in that, actually, because I want her to be able to connect. I don't want to take away connection with people, but I don't want her constantly scrolling. She doesn't have the frontal lobe development to be able to handle that kind of an addictive technology at this point, in my opinion. So she can pick up her phone anytime she wants, and she can, from her wall, and she can call a friend, and she can talk and communicate with other people. I think there's a resurgence in interest in this, which we're going to talk about in a minute here. But I do want to talk about a concept that I joke with my kids about, but it's called digital dementia, okay? Now, this is an emerging thought here, but there's been some studies on this, surrounding excessive screen time. And what we're finding here is that the part of the brain, the hippocampus, which is in charge of memory, it's atrophying here. So we're seeing 16-year-old girls having the hippocampal volume of 60-year-old men. That's a problem, right? And they're connecting this to excessive screen time. So these are things to think about for our teens, for our adolescents, and for ourselves as individuals, right? In a nutshell, we do have a mental health crisis, I would say, given some of those statistics. But I think that it's important for all of us, and young people especially, to have the opportunity to experience boredom, creativity, movement, real world social interactions. I find that kids have a really hard time communicating verbally with adults because so much communication is texting, one-word answers. We don't know how to talk to adults anymore. So that's why we have landlines, like it or not. So, I think there is a mental health crisis, but I think often it's not that our minds are failing, it's that we're chronically overstimulated. So that's...
Yeah, we haven't developed the capacity to, and maybe we were never meant to have that level of stimulation.
That's right.
I was going to say something like we haven't maybe evolved to the place where we can handle that level of stimulation.
We're going to devolve, Jeff,
but we're going to
that's what the trends are showing.
That's what's actually happening, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The hippocampus development in a 16-year-old girl is showing early dementia, right? I mean, that's kind of crazy.
My 13-year-old, actually, she's in a speech and debate class, and she did a whole speech on the negatives of using cell phones to her class, and she presented digital dementia and talked about this. Highly unpopular, but it was a great talk, and I'm trying to empower her to say this is good for you and you're learning good skills even though we're withholding this from you. So
let's talk about some ways we can intervene, like trends if there are, but let's get to also what can we do as creators, as leaders, what can we do in community? And let's make that a bridge to hope here in the next 10 minutes.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I pulled some interesting data that I thought was going to be interesting to share with you all. So, what are the trends that we're seeing? We are obviously seeing the bad side, which we're talking about, but we're also seeing a lot of good, actually, that is super interesting to me. So I think that as humans, we are meaning-seeking creatures. And when we're overwhelmed and overstimulated and we're isolated and life becomes superficial, we start searching for something deeper. And that is like an amazing thing that I think I'm seeing and the world is seeing. So a couple things that I think point to this, Christian music, and I'm not here to just promote Christian music or anything, but Christian music represents a deeper meaning, authenticity, hope. For the past 2 years, Christian music has become the fastest growing genre of music, which is shocking. I guess it has increased about 60% in the past 5 years, and on the Billboard Top 100 for the first time in over a decade. So there's these emerging artists like Forrest Frank, Brandon Lake, Phil Wickham, Lauren Daigle that are they're becoming very popular in culture, and they give a message of hope, of positivity, of meaning, of depth, authenticity. So I think that is very interesting. That's what, and it's predominantly Gen Z and millennials. That's the music they're gravitating to, which is, I think, positive. Within the spiritual concept, the realm here, the Bible app. I was looking at the Bible app here, numbers. In 2021, there was 500 million downloads. In 2025, 1 billion, which is pretty wild. Daily engagement increased 19% in 2025 from the year prior. And what are people searching for in the Bible app? They are searching for, the keywords are anxiety, hope, healing, peace, love, and purpose. So people are searching for this. People are seeking deeper meaning, deeper connection, which is incredibly hopeful. Teen alcohol, drug, marijuana use is at a near historic low in the United States, which is also pretty amazing to see. And the other thing I wanted to hit on here, which, I have a ring here, wearable technology, but the wearable technology space is blowing up, right? And so you think, well, why? Why is it blowing up? Because people are interested in sleep quality. We're interested in recovery. We are becoming increasingly interested in stress management and regulation, longevity, mindfulness. These are the things that people are interested in right now, and that's where they're putting their money. So I believe that revenue for some of these technologies Well, it's about a $200 billion industry now, as of 2025, wearable technology that gives us this information. And I think Aura is the main one in this space. Their revenue was about $500 million in 2024 and $1 billion in 2025. So what a huge increase there. And what does that tell us about people? It tells us that we're starting to prioritize self-care in a meaningful way. So, that's something that I thought was really huge. We see that people are actively trying to focus on reducing their stress, increasing their recovery. I think this all points to hope, right? As we take better care of ourselves, we are more capable of caring for other people. And I would say, like, when I was in grad school, there was no concept of self-care. We talked about it academically, but we more talked about how we didn't know how to do it. We're just such hard workers. But I think, what is self-care? I wouldn't have known how to describe it probably 10 years ago, really at all. Now I think we're seeing self-care is having meaningful connections with other people, face-to-face connections with other people, having time of quiet, having boundaries from our technology, boundaries from our work, which follows us home and it's with us all the time. Focusing on our sleep hygiene. I found this device amazing, to see, wow, that's when I get stressed. That's when I don't sleep well. That's, if I have a glass of wine, that's what happens to my HRV, right? You become acutely aware of it. I think technology is a wonderful tool, but it's a dangerous master, right? We can't follow it, but can use it as a tool to help us, to help guide us to living more meaningful lives that are filled with wellness and good health for ourselves. And that spills over to what we can give to other people in our community. So.
We probably have so much more we could cover.
A couple of nutshells.
Is there more hope that you would give us as we wrap up, and then we'll have time for a couple questions. So be thinking about questions if you want to ask Julia. Any additional hope or things we can do maybe in community together? Because I think that's a good thread, just the idea of like connecting with each other, things we could do in community together to bring back mental health. So it's not just this isolated individualistic effort, but it's actually something we're trying to do together.
Yeah, one other thing that I thought was interesting is the value. They've done a lot of studies on like eating meals together, meals with your family, right, or with other people. And it is generally plummeted since the 70s, the popularity of sitting down and eating a meal together. But I think there's kind of this increased interest in Gen Z and millennials in community eating, let's say, as an example. And what do we see from people who eat together 3 to 5 times a week? We see increased academic performance. We see decreased risky behavior. We see increased mental health. So increased quality of life, increased sense of belonging. So you see the data points to this. So I think that spending time face to face in real connections with our community is critical, whether that's through groups like this, community working, church, other special interest groups. I think pushing yourself to get outside that comfort zone, which it's easy to stay in the virtual world, but it's not good for us, to some extent. Yeah. So, that's great. I think that.
Yeah. Anybody have a question? Just raise your hand. Maybe introduce yourself and then go ahead and ask. Nice and loud so we can all hear. So just to recap the question for the video, what you're asking what the effect of COVID was on kind of the state of the crisis and the pendulum swing.
Yeah, I think some pros and cons came out of COVID, to be honest with you. I think we've seen a worsening in our overall mental health since COVID and as a result. Increased depression, increased anxiety. However, I think mental health has become a lot less stigmatized. People are talking about mental health a heck of a lot more. There's more accessibility. Telehealth wasn't even a thing. Like, we became largely telehealth practice overnight. Well, entirely in the midst of COVID. We didn't do a single telehealth visit prior to COVID. And I have a close relationship with an insurance executive, and he said, the cat's out of the bag and you're not going to be able to get it back in. And so it's true. It's like, that is something that it's going to be hard to roll that one back. So now telehealth is an accepted practice modality for the mental health industry, which is great for so many people who wouldn't have otherwise had access. I think the decrease in stigma, we're talking about it. You hear famous people talking about it. You see ads for therapy practices now. I mean, so I think that, and the utilization rates of people seeking therapy and wanting to work on their own mental health and wellness is skyrocketing. So that's so hopeful. So.
Love that.
Yeah.
What else? Another, Tiffany?
Yeah, but like in volunteerism, we see like huge rates of burnout and people aren't volunteering anymore. So what is that? Like, I don't know if you think about that at like a global scale.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think in general, it's a bit of a fine line, because I think serving others can really actually improve our mental health. Getting outside of yourself. I mean, this is something that I promote with my own patients who are chronically, apathetically depressed. Getting outside yourself and helping someone else. That's huge. But for people whose whole career is a helper, there's a high rate of burnout, even for my industry or for like humanitarian efforts, possibly like what you're saying. So I think, for people who don't spend any time serving or volunteering, I think it is important for our mental health and wellness to get outside and help other people. Now, for people whose whole career is that, maybe the focus for some of those individuals is more individualized self-care, right? Quiet time, getting out in nature, focusing on your own, mental health concerns. If you have some history of PTSD, how are you handling that? Are you talking to somebody? Are you working through that? So, I mean, I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but I guess I just think it kind of depends on, which person you are in that equation. Are you the burnt out humanitarian, volunteer who needs to focus on their selves a little bit more, or are you some of the patients we see in our practice who their whole life is focused on themselves and they do nothing to serve other people?
I think the challenge with that I'm hearing in your question, Tiffany, and the answer is the idea of having that other orientation and thinking about if I can prioritize myself. Because I think the challenge in the question was, what I was hearing was more of like, I feel like I'm in such a place of privilege even to be thinking about my own mental health and my own self-care when I'm in these humanitarian efforts in these crises around the world where people are literally at war and their families are dying and I can't eat and I don't have shelter. It's like that confrontation is really challenging. That's what I'm hearing for people, and I can understand that. So I'm wondering if there's a way that culturally we can start shifting that narrative so that it's like we can think, I'm going to be so much more capable of serving well if I do even just a bare minimum of self-care and not see it from this place of like I'm in privilege so I can't do that for myself, but more of if I can do this for myself, how much more able to be connected and to be serving these other people will I be?
Yeah, and I think there's also an aspect of comparison there that we want to be mindful of. We see it maybe with social media commonly, but I think there's an aspect of comparison there where it's almost like I don't deserve to feel badly. Okay. I don't, like look at what's going on over here. Like I feel guilty carrying my own struggle here, right? But I think honoring your own truth and who you are as an individual, even if it's a lot better than what's going on over here, it's still something that deserves attention within yourself.
Yeah.
But.
Thank you for being here. This feels like it was just the start of a conversation, as most of these do. I know you need to leave pretty soon, but you have a few minutes to hang out, and if people want to ask some follow-up questions, you can continue to be here in community. Please, if you're interested in co-working for the day, then go and check in at Fieldwork, and you can talk with either Vanessa or Ronnie about getting connected there. I do want to one thing that I wrote down that I thought maybe is a good summary for us as a kind of an epiphany takeaway for me and maybe for everybody, that I'm going to be kind of repeating sort of like as a reminder, as a mantra for myself, is this idea that you said, technology is a wonderful tool, but a dangerous master. And I think that is something that we can all carry with us to be reminded as a framework for understanding where we are in this mental health crisis and how we need to be thinking about responding not only individually but in community. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you for
here.
having me.